No one does. If you can't sleep at night because you have a huge problem with the IRS, I've got some free advice for you. This service is strictly limited to individuals that owe the IRS $10,000 or more in back taxes. And if you qualify, we can guarantee that you won't be writing a big fat check to the IRS, or our services cost you nothing. The first 100 people that call today will get a free tax consultation worth $500. Stop worrying about your IRS problem. We can help you, we promise. Call the tax doctor right now. I mean right now, to learn more.
800-240-4587. 800-240-4587. 800-240-4587. That's 800-240-4587.
Why have thousands of aspiring authors teamed up with Christian Faith Publishing to publish their book? Because Christian Faith Publishing is an author-friendly publisher who understands that your labor is more than just a book. We provide authors freedom and flexibility throughout the publishing process, professional book editing, award-winning design, and some of the highest royalty structures in the publishing industry. And as always, you will retain 100% of the rights to your book.
I was looking to find a company that I could trust, one that assisted in the editing process completely.
The most important qualities that I was looking for was a publisher who was honest and upfront, no hidden costs or fees, and owning the rights to my own work.
Christian Faith Publishing will publish, market, and sell your books in all major bookstores, online booksellers, as well as specialty Christian bookstores. Call for your free author submission kit.
800-978-4812. 800-978-4812. 800-978-4812. That's 800-978-4812.
Fast Track Student Loans can get your student loans out of default, stop any wage garnishments, stop collection calls, and stop seizure of your tax refund. Give yourself a break. Stop the stress and get your student loan payments down to as little as $25 a month based on what you can afford to pay. 800-709-4395. 800-709-4395. 800-709-4395. 800-709-4395.
Here's important new information from the Diabetes Solution Center for you, a family member, or a loved one suffering with diabetes. If you have lost your provider, or if you need a provider for diabetic supplies, you may qualify to receive your diabetic testing supplies now with little or no out-of-pocket cost, regardless of your age. All you need is Medicare or private insurance to be potentially eligible. Call the Diabetes Solution Center right now for details. Just takes a couple of minutes. Our friendly, knowledgeable agents will give you free, no-obligation information, handle all the insurance paperwork, and make sure your supplies are delivered directly to your door for free.
Call U.S. Medical Supply 24 hours a day. 800-597-9323. 800-597-9323. 800-597-9323. Call right now. 800-597-9323.
Fast Track Student Loans can get your student loans out of default, stop any wage garnishments, stop collection calls, and stop seizure of your tax refund. Give yourself a break. Stop the stress and get your student loan payments down to as little as $25 a month based on what you can afford to pay. 800-709-4395. 800-709-4395. 800-709-4395. 800-709-4395.
Good evening, Johnson County. Welcome to this week's episode of The Breakdown. I'm your host, Greg Cooper, and here on The Breakdown, we deep dive local politics, mainly school boards and city councils, but any and all Johnson County politics are on the table. We air most Thursdays at 5 p.m. You can visit the JOCO Community Radio Facebook page to watch shows live or to see replays. Also, you can go to www.jococommunityradio.com, where Apple and Android apps are available. Tune in to get the ins and outs of Johnson County, Texas. Tonight's show is meant to educate, inform, and introduce listeners to some individuals who are throwing their hat into the arena and trying to make a positive impact on their community, mainly involving the property tax process. One of the hottest topics and points of frustration for many citizens of Johnson County and the state of Texas are the ever increasing and oppressive nature of property taxes. From the state level to the local level, there are layers and layers of redundant and confusing policies, codes, laws, etc., which make it basically a full-time job to even begin to remotely understand how this complex process works. To address the elephant in the room of what exactly is the Central Appraisal District and why it is imperative that we as citizens pay closer attention to it and get involved with it, here is the definition of the CAD that's taken directly from the state comptroller's website. Appraisal districts are responsible for appraising property for property tax purposes for each taxing unit that imposes property taxes on property in the appraisal district. An appraisal district is established in each county and has the same boundaries as the county's boundaries. An appraisal district is a political subdivision of the state that is governed by a board of directors. Voting member taxing units are entitled to vote on the appointment of members of the board of directors. The board of directors has required duties and authority under Texas law. Tax Code Chapter 6 contains much of the statutory authority for boards of directors if anybody is interested in learning more about the specifics of how they operate. The main taxing entities are your county, local city councils, your local school districts, and a few smaller taxing entities. School districts taking the brunt and largest chunk of the money individuals contribute to property taxes. These taxing entities, they need your tax revenue to operate. They don't generate their own revenue. They need your property tax revenue. The county, city councils, and school districts nominate and elect the individuals who are intimately involved with the process of how your property value is appraised. We as residents of Johnson County have the ability to get involved, make our voices heard, and begin to pull back the covers on the Central Appraisal District, the way it operates, and influence the process to be more transparent. And that's one of the goals of what these individuals are doing here today, to bring transparency in the process to you, the listeners and citizens of Johnson County. Tonight on the breakdown, we're going to introduce 5 such individuals. One is Mr. Craig Hundley. Mr. Hundley needs no introduction. His Facebook group has exploded to well over 7,400 members. It is called Texas Nonpartisan Political Group from Horse Barn Property Tax Reform. It has done more to raise awareness locally of the complex world of property taxes than any other entity I know of. The group has reach across the state. It has inspired and helped educate many residents, me included. Our other 4 have decided to get involved and attempt to become part of the process. They are working with city councils, the county, school districts, and the other taxing entities to secure votes so they can become elected as the Central Appraisal District Board of Directors here in Johnson County. More importantly than working with those taxing entities for the very first time, and they deserve a lot of credit for this, they're bringing this process to us, the people of Johnson County, and not leaving this process behind closed doors. And they need our help to make that happen. Before we introduce Mr. Hundley and the 4 nominees, I'm going to begin this conversation with what I came across while researching this topic. I came across the best singular definition of exactly what the Central Appraisal District does and to who they're accountable to. The source is Texapedia. It's considered the encyclopedia of Texas civics, and they define the Central Appraisal District as follows, and listen closely. Appraisal districts in Texas are responsible for estimating the monetary value of all real estate in a given county for the purpose of assessing you property tax on each piece of property owned. Appraisal districts in Texas are each governed by a board of directors. The member of the board of directors are nominated and elected by the taxing entities. They're not nominated or elected by us, the people. Appraisal districts in Texas work in conjunction with the local taxing entities, so they can assess property tax on their behalf, not your behalf, not my behalf, not the property owner's behalf, on behalf of the taxing entities. These include, again, school districts, cities, and counties, and all other smaller taxing entities. It's very important we remember that the taxing entities normally elect and not nominate and elect these individuals. And this group is trying to pull that back and allow more input from the average citizen. So without further ado, I have the distinct privilege of introducing Mr. Paul Jones, Ms. Amy Lingo, Mr. Duaine Goulding, Mr. John Wood, and special guest, Mr. Craig Hundley. So first, Mr. Craig Hundley, thank you, sir, for being here. Instrumental in this property tax struggle and providing a platform and a space for citizens to learn and understand the process. You've been at this for more than 4 years. What made you start and take more of a proactive approach to property taxes?
Well, let me tell you to begin with, before I even get started, the ad valorem tax system is the greatest crime against humanity. But what started was I lived in Burleson. About 2014, my wife came to me and said, I got good news and bad news. I said, I want the good news. Your home's paid for. I said, what's the bad news? It's going to cost you $15,000 a year to stay in it. And that's one of the first shots that got me going. And then I packed up, sold her home, and we moved to the country in Grandview. And my goal was to have a small compound, my wife, my grandkids, my daughter, and her husband. And while my daughter's house was getting completed, she came over in tears. And I'm going, what's going on? And she said, they've raised my monthly payment $378 a month due to property tax. I'm getting mad. And so I'm just sitting in my horse barn one night. And I'm sitting there and I'm fuming, and I'm getting a hold of people. I'm sending out messages and getting feedback of how many people are suffering. So here I am in my horse barn. I'm going to start a group. And I go, Texas, nonpartisan, because both sides of the fence are affected, Democrat and Republican. Nonpartisan political group from the horse barn. Of course, I'm sitting in my horse barn. Property tax reform. And the group exploded. But in the meantime, I get these heart-wrenching stories every night in messengers, people that call me. When I was a child in high school, we had a police officer in Cleburne, and he wrote me. He's in his 80s. He had to go back to work. And he said, Mr. Hundley, he was working when I was a kid. And he said, I had to go back to work because it's food, medicine, or property tax. And I'm just telling you, I had to decide to start a fight. I'm serious with it. I'm going to fight this the rest of my life. We have gotten legislation filed in Austin the past 2 sessions, many co-sponsors. Now it keeps getting shoved under the table, but we're continuing. We're never going to quit.
Good for you, sir. Good for you. And that's awesome. And your group's exploded, and it's a true testament to the grit you've shown in this fight. Mr. John Wood, he's not able to be here today. He had a prior commitment, and he will be missed. It's important to remember that these nominees are not running against one another. They're all running for the people, and these nominees should be considered a package deal. We need this collective group to get elected to this central appraisal district so they can affect change as a board of directors. So the fact that he's not here, this is a package deal that we're pushing here. You want to change, think big and bold. Mr. Wood epitomizes this, and we're sorry he cannot be here. Mr. Paul Jones, sir, You're the first one we're going to introduce and talk to today that's vying for a spot on the Central Appraisal District Board of Districts. How has the process been going so far for you, and what led to your decision to throw your hat in the ring and affect change in Johnson County, sir?
Well, I think it's, excuse me, off to a good start. We've gotten a number of nominations from several of the city councils around Johnson County, to include Burleson, Godley, Keene, and the County Commissioners Court. So I think we're off to a good running start, but we're going to need more, and we're going to keep working at it.
Awesome. And thank you again for putting your hat in the ring. It's always a tough step. One thing to do what I do and sit behind a mic and chirp. It's another thing to actually to do what you're doing. So thank you very much for that. Ms. Amy Lingo, ma'am, thank you for being here. It's much appreciated. And we want to extend a thank you to your husband too for what he does for the fire department, being a first responder. So please extend our thanks to him for that. And how's the process been going for you and regarding the Central Appraisal District and the property tax process, and what led to your decision to go down this road and get involved with this process?
Well, I'll say the main thing that led to the decision to get involved in this process is the amount of property tax increases we've received over the last 20 years that we've been in our home. We built in 2003, and we now pay about 152% more in property taxes than we did originally. So it's really hard to budget for that sort of thing as a family. And I think that the process has been going well. It's making me step outside of my comfort zone. Craig helps to push me, or I wouldn't be here speaking in public. You know, I retired from banking. One of the reasons is because it was time for me to step aside from from speaking in public. But when you have something to say, you got to get your message out. And I thank you for having us on your show so that we can try to do that. I've been studying the policies and procedures and from the state comptroller's office. I'm in the process of requesting those policies and procedures from the Central Appraisal District office. I think that's one place we can try to make an impact, is to understand what those guidelines are that the appraiser is making the decisions on, based on. I do understand there's a mandate from the comptroller's office and that we are required to have 100% of our values accounted for. But when you go into the appraisal district, they'll tell you that it is an across-the-board blanket appraisal. So they don't know the ins and outs of your house or your property. They don't know if there's something that's derogatory on your property that would affect the value or make it less desirable to a buyer. And those are the kind of things you have to bring to their attention. And not everyone is able to do that or has the knowledge to do that. And so they're at a disadvantage. As the taxpayer, you're then at a disadvantage. So we just want to be here and try to be a voice and make a change.
And I really appreciate that as a resident of Johnson County, seeing you guys get involved. It's very, very much appreciated. And last, but definitely not least, Mr. Duaine Goulding. You, sir, thank you for being here, and thank you for forward thinking regarding the oppressive state of property taxes and the issues with the process, and what led you to get involved with this, and what led you to decide to throw your hat in the ring as a member of the Central Appraisal District as a board of director.
Well, a few years ago, I found Craig's Facebook page, started following that. Over my adult life, I've had a number of opportunities to engage with the Central Appraisal Districts wherever I live. Now, I was born in Cleburne, grew up, graduated from Cleburne High School, went off to college and off to Dallas for a career, and moved back when I retired. So I've had experience with the CAD in Tarrant County, where I lived, Dallas County, which I kind of sort of lived there too, and Johnson County. As I started to watch Craig's Facebook page and see the pain and suffering that people are having from their property taxes, I began to look more into it and began to talk to people with my experience that I've had with the CAD. Simple things like every property has a data card. I have never met anyone ever that knows that. And that's the basis that they start from, assessing the appraisal on your property. Everybody should know that. I think the other thing I'd like to point out, stop me, Greg, if I go too long here.
No, you're good.
Every individual pays property tax. I don't care if you're a renter. I don't care if you're a kid working at Sonic on the weekends and you're buying a burger and cheese fries, and because part of the cost structure of that business is their property tax, the customers are paying the property tax. The business effectively is a pass-through. So every individual pays property taxes. Talking about homeowners, what everybody wants is a fair shake on their taxes. I don't think anybody resents paying taxes, but they just want to have a fair shake. Today, very few people know whether they're getting a fair shake, so they suspect the worst. And the cat, I like to relate it to the Wizard of Oz movie. Somebody's behind that curtain, and once a year, out comes a tax statement. And you don't like what's on it, but you don't know what to do about it except to protest. And if you protest, that's a whole different experience. So we've got a system that is a mystery to most people. We've got to open the curtains. We've got to make it transparent. The taxpayers should know when they're getting a fair shake and when they're not because of a gut feeling, but because of the way the system works. The CAD right now works on behalf of the taxing entities, as you pointed out. I think the CAD should have a dual responsibility to not only the taxing units, but also to the taxpayers. They should look for the right balance in the education of everyone involved in the system so the system can be fairly administered. And today, I don't think that's happening at all. My goal, if I can get on the board with these other folks, would be to create that transparency so that every taxpayer has the opportunity to understand how the system works, what they can do to pay their fair share of taxes, which in many cases would be less than they're paying today. And then if we can do that, if you know what you're paying and you know how it's assessed and you think it's a reasonable assessment, then you may not like it, but you're going to feel like at least it's fair. So in my case, that's kind of what I'm after.
Well, again, thank you guys very much for throwing your hat in the ring. And just to reiterate this, these nominees are asking for the public's help. In the replay of this video, we're going to continually post the contact information to all of the taxing entities. This is going to be the county, the city councils, and the school districts. So the county, the city councils, and the school districts, they operate on a budget that's dependent on taxpayers' property taxes to be able to operate. The Central Appraisal District is the one who determines one of the variables that goes into that process. So it's important after that, as we put this contact information out, that this is not as simple as going to the polls and voting for a candidate like everybody's accustomed to. The taxing entities have basically placed a delineating line between themselves and the board of directors. So they elect who's going to feed them the revenue they need to operate. And they operate in the shadows. And these individuals are trying to bring that process out in front of all of us so we all understand it better. And there's not this big mystery of why am I paying so much more every single year after year after year. So again, thank you guys. So now we're going to start going into a roundtable discussion here. And what we want to talk about is we want to talk about the process that goes into how property taxes are assessed, the way that the budget works and how they need to get this property assessment. And we want to hear some stories about the oppressiveness that you guys are hearing as you're out talking to people. And then right after our break, we're going to discuss on who's working with you, who's not working with you, and who we really need to get in contact with to get the support to get you guys nominated. So, Craig, do you want to lead it off with how we go from here and talk about some of the examples of the oppressiveness and where you guys are at and the feedback you're getting? What are you seeing and what are you hearing and what's working and what's not, and what can we all do to help?
Okay. Well, 4 years ago, when we figured out these elections were going on, Amy Lingo was our first candidate. Of course, my friend and I, Dan Roberts, and a friend of mine, Kevin G., we went around speaking to all the taxing entities, getting shut down at every corner. We got a few votes out of the city of Joshua and a few votes out of the city of Cleburne. But pretty much after that, we were shut down because you have to have about 870 votes to put a person on the CAD board. So in that 4 years, I've been trying to educate, get to know city council people, and telling people how the system works and that they need to be supporting their citizens, the people that put them in office. Our elected citizens need to back them. And so far, I mean, right off the bat, city of Cleburne, Chris Fletcher and his council, they were amazing. They nominated all 4 of our candidates.
Good for them.
City of Godly, all 4 of our candidates. City of Grandview, all 4 of our candidates. City of Cleburne, they've nominated 2. Cleburne ISD has nominated 2. Of course, we only had to be nominated 1 time to be on the ballot, but we're just trying to, go above and beyond. The next step is going to be the vote. There's 5,000 votes in the county. Each entity has a certain amount of votes. And our goal is for the taxing entities to send the votes to the citizens that put them in office. No more of this, what's been going on throughout the history of Central Appraisal District. It's time that the citizens look over Central Appraisal District.
So, Amy, he brought up you and how he got you involved with this fight in the last couple of years. How is your assessment the same? How's the feedback been from the councils and school districts that you've been reaching out to, and what are you seeing and hearing?
We've definitely appreciated their support. It was Burleson, Chris Fletcher with Burleson. That was our very first across the board nomination. Since then, I mean, we have received support in most of the places we visited. I think, we're on the ballot, and we're just going to continue to educate ourselves so that when we are elected, which we do hope to be, all 4 of us, we can be a good power team and really help bring the citizens together. Now, you want to hear some examples. I had a neighbor call me this morning. He was going before the appraisal review board, and he was a bit nervous. He didn't really know what to be prepared for. His property had doubled in this past year. The value of it had doubled, and it was very significant. We're talking about $200,000 increase in his value. Now, granted, that's his homestead, and it will only increase on his tax appraised value by 10% per year. So what he'll actually pay taxes on the value will just be a 10% increase per year. But if they increase you $200,000, well, every year you're going to have that 10% increase until it gets to that magic number. So, we gave him a little bit of advice. I got on the appraisal district's website. I will say right now, with all of the changes and what we hope is going to be passed in November in the elections, where you get to actually put your vote in as a citizen to try to help relieve some of what's happening in the property tax system, that there are changes coming. So the Central Appraisal District is behind for that reason, and also for the reason that these appraised values have created such a need among the citizens to go and protest, even though they're in muddy waters. They don't know what they're doing. So anyway,
and your goals are to bring this process and all the available options and resources make that very out in front of everybody to help with these processes?
Yes, to make it clearer for the citizens as they're going, almost to give them a step by step. And another thing is, when you go in front of the appraisal review board, we want it to be a process that you feel like they're on your side as well, that it's not an adversarial
Got about
relationship.
30 seconds till our break. Just
So, we want that support from our appraisal review board as well.
awesome. So as we get ready to go on break here, we're with Mr. Paul Jones Mr. John Wood's not with us today. He couldn't be here, but again, this is a package deal. We're with Mr. Paul Jones, Miss Amy Lingo, Mr. Duaine Goulding, and special guest Craig Hundley. This is the breakdown. We're talking about how to fix a central appraisal district, how to get your input into it. We'll be back here in a few moments. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, loved it.
Let's be honest. Wheelchairs are heavy, bulky, and ugly. If you carry a wheelchair in your car to take care of a loved one, you know how hard it is getting that clunky, old-style wheelchair in and out of your car. Introducing the Feather Chair Wheelchair. At 13 pounds, it's the world's lightest wheelchair. It folds in seconds and fits neatly in your trunk, backseat, or closet, so you can take it everywhere. And it's only available right here. Order yours today and get a free wheelchair case, a $50 value, yours free. The Feather Chair, the world's lightest wheelchair, is just $4.99 with easy payments as low as $16 a month. Sorry, no Medicare or insurance accepted. So call right now to order yours.
800-823-5826. 800-823-5826. 800-823-5826. That's 800-823-5826.
Fast Track Student Loans can get your student loans out of default, stop any wage garnishments, stop collection calls, and stop seizure of your tax refund. Give yourself a break. Stop the stress and get your student loan payments down to as little as $25 a month based on what you can afford to pay. 800-709-4395. 800-709-4395. 800-709-4395. 800-709-4395. Fast Track Student Loans can get your student loans out of default, stop any wage garnishments, stop collection calls, and stop seizure of your tax refund. Give yourself a break. Stop the stress and get your student loan payments down to as little as $25 a month based on what you can afford to pay. 800-709-4395. 800-709-4395. 800-709-4395. 800-709-4395.
All right, welcome back to the breakdown. We're here talking the Central Appraisal District, the out-of-control property taxes, and what you can do as a citizen to get involved. It's going to take a little bit more than just going to the polls, but it's absolutely needed, and these individuals are going to explain to us how we can help and how we can start solving this process and pulling back the wool over everybody's eyes and how this works. But before we get on to our next segment, Joco Community Radio is proud to be the voice of Johnson County, Texas, and is live 24/7 on the TuneIn Radio Network. TuneInJoco.com is the place to find all the ways to listen and watch, and the station app is also available for free on Android and Apple devices. Simply search your store, check out our lineup and more at JocoCommunityRadio.com. This episode and more brought to you by Next Level Claims, making your insurance work for you. Reach out to your Texas sales rep at 844-TEX-HAIL. That's 844-839-4245. And be sure to dress your arms and more at thetiffy.com. So we're here talking Central Appraisal District, and we're with some individuals here that are really, really trying to make this process simpler, more understandable, more fair, and more beholden to the actual citizens and not the taxing entities. Mr. Paul Jones, Ms. Amy Lingo, Mr. Duaine Goulding, and Mr. John Wood are asking for your help in contacting school districts, city councils in the county, and demanding that they are put in as a member of the board of directors for the central appraisal districts. And we're going to get right back into the discussion here. And you, sir, wanted to talk about a little bit of story and background here. So what are you hearing, and what's your experiences with this process?
Well, my experience with taxes so far is not as much as these other folks, but I will tell you that what brought me into the fight and advocacy of fighting higher taxes was the city of Joshua wanted to annex us a few years back. And when they annex you, it's usually by force. It's not voluntary. And you're brought into the city limits against your will, and immediately your city taxes are imposed. If most folks out in the country don't pay city taxes until you've been brought into the country by the city that's adjacent. They would also be in control of everything such as zoning and city ordinances, which would be imposed on you. It soon became clear that, with all the expenses and taxes and so forth, that we were going to be forced off our property if that happened. And so we started fighting at that time against property taxes was our main goal. We were going to be increased. So we'd have to put in, the city ordinances, we'd have to put in lengthy driveways and improve services. That alone would have been too much for us to bear. So what did we do? We fought the city, but got nowhere. So what we did from there was went on and fight the county. Excuse me, I'm trying to I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit here. We went on with the fight, and with a lot of volunteers and help from people in Texas, we were proud of saying that we got the laws overturned in Johnson County, and forced annexation became against the law. Additionally, we took the fight to the next level, which was to the state, and we managed to get forced annexation ended there as well. So it's been a long fight for me in advocating against higher property taxes, and that's what brought me into the fold was annexation.
So it's great you bring up forced annexation. And for everybody out there that's lived in Texas for any amount of time, everybody remembers the time when cities, as they were growing, would reach out and they would snatch up non-city residents, and they would force them to be taxed at the city rate. And that was a big point of contention for many, many years. And this individual was very instrumental in helping and working with the state to get that overturned. And that's a very, very good example of how all of us getting involved and doing just a little bit more can actually affect positive change. The way that the appraisals are going through the Central Appraisal District is the next step in this overall larger reform issues. And it's important to highlight the wins, because change can happen when we get involved. And Mr. Goulding, earlier you brought up a data card, and a data card is something that the Central Appraisal District has on everybody. Explain to a data card what it is, its purpose, and why everybody should know exactly why the data card on every piece of property is important.
Okay, it's a little background here. We moved to the country 4 years ago. I got an appraisal for the house that we bought, separate from the acreage. The house was appraised. This is a 40-something-year-old, 2,500 square foot farmhouse. I got an appraisal for 407. I looked at that. I was just shocked. I looked at all the other farms and ranches around me. Nothing compared. I hired a state licensed appraiser to come in and do an appraisal. I filed a protest. The appraisal came in at 247. Big difference.
Yes,
so I thought I was pretty well armed to go into the protest hearing in front of the appraisal review board. What I'd like to say about the appraisal review board, when I walked into that room, now as a former executive, I've had a lot of experience in executive committees and board meetings and things like that. So I've learned to read the room. Suffice it to say, it was not friendly when I walked in. They clearly were there to defend the appraisal from the Central Appraisal District. When I started to give my pitch, they stopped me and let the CAD go first. And the appraiser said how she did the appraisal. And then they allowed me to speak. My question was, number one, to the appraiser from the CAD, are you state licensed? And the answer was no. Do you start with the data card as the basis? That surprised everybody. Nobody knows what a data card is. I have yet to meet anyone that knows a data card. The data card is a document. It's basically one sheet of paper, 8.5 by 11, has all the details on your property, the square footage. It has a general drawing of the house, the porches, the patios, and that kind of stuff. My data card was wrong. The data was incorrect. That's the basis from which they start their appraisal process.
So as they appraise property, they're looking at data specific to your property, and yours was incorrect, and it almost doubled what they were trying to tax you at.
Right.
And they don't make it clear that data cards exist and how they do this process. And this is something that you'll help with if nominated to the.
I think we should educate the taxpayers and know where all this exists and what they can check. I would encourage every taxpayer, go to the CAD and ask for a copy of your data card for your property. If it's correct, great. If it isn't, request that they correct the bad data. In my case, it created a dilemma because I had an appraisal way below what the CAD had appraised from a state licensed appraiser. The CAD is not state licensed, or their appraiser, that particular one was not. The appraisal review board became, I would describe it as somewhat hostile. They were trying to defend the CAD. That's the wrong thing for the appraisal review board to do, in my opinion. They should strive to strike a balance between the CAD appraisal and the taxpayer. And everyone should understand, both sides should understand what they come up with and why. And I think we can do better. I think we can do better. We have to do better for the taxpayers. And like I said before, I don't think anybody resents paying taxes. They resent not getting a fair shake. And to date, I don't know of anyone that feels like they're getting a fair shake on their tax appraisals. And I have yet to meet, and I've talked to a lot of people, anyone that knows the data card exists. The appraiser told me about the data card. I have had two other experiences. When I lived in Grand Prairie, the Dallas Appraisal District had me having a swimming pool. When they first put stuff online, and I ran IT consulting companies. So I was one of the first adopters of the internet. And then I looked at my property and it said I had a swimming pool. So I called the CAD and said, hey, I don't have a pool. They send a guy out and he looks at it and he goes, oh, yeah, okay. You've never had a pool, have you? I said, no. Been there over 20 years, never had a pool. So my question was, well, how do I recoup my overpayments of taxes? The answer was, sorry, Charlie. It is what it is.
So moral of the story is go make sure your
get the data card.
Collect.
My house I built in Burleson when I moved here, I got my appraisal. I was shocked, compared it to all my neighbors. We're way out of whack. I called the Central Appraisal District, and when I spoke with a lady there, it was almost double the square footage of my house is what they had on record. And she said, well, your house is like 4,800 square feet. I said, no, it's like not anywhere near that. And she said, hold on a minute. She goes back here banging on her computer. She says, does 2580 sound closer? I said, that's about what the builder told me it was going to be. So the data card was wrong, and she found some way to correct it. And then, of course, I just told the story about the data card where I am now. You've got to get involved. If you're happy with what you have now and you're happy with the system, don't worry about it. But if you're not happy with the tax appraisals, you're not happy with your property taxes, don't understand how the system works, you've got to get involved. The best way to get involved is help us get elected to the board. Go to these meetings, contact your school board members, city councilmen, commissioners, talk to them, explain that you want us on the board. We will open it up. We will make it available for everybody to be educated. And I suspect what I know about the CAD is probably more than 99% of the people. And I bet I know just the tip of the iceberg. we have to get educated first, and then we have to educate the taxpayers.
Absolutely. And you bring up having that balance. And I mean, that's this collective group of Mr. Paul Jones, Ms. Amy Lingo, Mr. Duaine Goulding, and Mr. John Wood need to collectively work together to affect this change. And they need everybody's help. In the replay of the show, we're going to be dropping the contact information to these city councils, school boards, etc. And it's going to take an email, a phone call by everybody to let these people know to vote for these individuals, because it's not as simple as going to the polls like we are used to voting. They've created that insulating layer. And the bottom line is they are beholden at this point to those taxing entities whose revenue is dependent on your high appraisals. And it creates shade for them. So very important everybody understands this, Mr. Goulding.
Yeah, better yet, in addition to contacting by email, phone, or personal contact, attend the meetings. The nominations are done. The ballot's going to be issued to the taxing entities by the end of the month. They have between November 1st and December 15th to make their decision on how they want to allocate their votes. They have to be in by December 15th. I suspect that most of the taxing entities will take this up in their November meetings. And the more people that show up and speak on our behalf and encourage or insist that the votes be allocated to us, the better chance we have of making a change and basically creating a new path forward for the CAD.
So you guys have talked to a lot of city councils. You guys have talked to a lot of school boards and stuff. Where are the friction points that you guys are seeing where you need the most help in the immediate future, other than all of them? Who would like to answer that?
It would be the school boards.
Absolutely.
And for whatever reason, I'll never understand, because appraisals affect every school board member, every student in that school. Their parents are being destroyed from the appraisals. They should be jumping on the bandwagon, supporting us to keep an eye on Central Appraisal District.
Well, I was at a Joshua ISD board work session last week, and a school board member flat out said, when this was brought up and being in a future meeting, that it doesn't matter. The state controls all that. So a lot of this may be education, because that is not the case.
No.
And I was appalled that she was so adamant about the fact that she didn't understand how this works. And school districts continually, and have for many years, they run the highest taxes they can. As they get their voter approval tax rate, they are maxing that out all the time. There's a problem with ISDs where they are addicted to government money. And I wish you guys luck in getting them to do anything that could affect anything with how much money they're taking, because they're taking as much as they can. And that's a topic for another day, but everybody needs to get out to their school districts. Ma'am, what are you hearing? And do you agree with that assessment? Is that what you're seeing?
You know, I'm going to say it's a sensitive subject, the schools. That is something that's near and dear to us. Of course, our children are utmost importance to us. So,
sure.
So I understand, but I am so tired of hearing the blame passed on to, you need to talk to your state. You need to talk to it doesn't matter. We're not going to lay down. And that's what it seems like the board members do, or those that are involved in the Central Appraisal District. I want to give you an example of I sat there and observed some of the things going on in the Central Appraisal District this year. This gentleman came in and he was definitely over 65 years old and had his exemption as such. And he came in and he approached the clerk and he said, I have a problem. I have my 65 exemption. I didn't think that my evaluation was supposed to increase, or at least, not this much. She said, sir, did you do any improvements? And he said, well, not to my home. And she said, did you build a swimming pool? He says, yes, I built a swimming pool. She said, well, that increased your taxable value by $286,000.
Wow, that's a nice pool.
Isn't it, though?
Great Wolf Lodge style.
Yes,
Oh, my God.
yes. So I did not hear the resolve to his situation, but I do know he was going to file his protest and go through the process.
I fill it in.
And I did learn this, though, that what she told him is that the improvements that you had in place when you filed for your 65 exemption will remain as such. But anything that you do after that will never be capped. So it will always be subject to an increase.
I think the way that they address these, if it's over 65, it doesn't affect you. There's a lot of things affected with over 65. A lot of generational wealth is going to be wrecked. A lot of people that leave their property to their family members, their family members can't keep it in the family. So just if you're over 65 and think that this won't affect you, you really need to deep dive that and understand how it will over time and long term. Absolutely. And sir, are you hearing the same things?
Absolutely. And one of the things that just really drives me crazy is, we've all heard stories over the last several years of people being driven out of their homes by property taxes. That's just not right, folks. At what point can all of us rest and relax and fully own our homes and properties? Taxation without representation is criminal. And that, to me, is what we have going on here. And I wanted to ask Mr. Goulding across from me here that isn't, along with the data cards, don't comps come into the equation as well in assessing the rates? And
well, in my protest hearing, what the CAD appraiser said is they have, this is a quote, we have formulas. And I know part of the formulas are comps, but they didn't detail out what the formulas were. The fact is those formulas are wrong when they start with a bad data card, number one. And number two, she admitted that she adjusted my assessment up. One of the questions I asked, have you visited my property? She said, no. I looked at pictures on the internet. It's really nice.
She adjusted you up based on the comps?
I don't know what it was based on. She just said it's a really pretty house.
Based on an aerial view.
Well, these were pictures that the real estate people had put online.
Oh,
that's called reward failure, punish success.
Well, and so this part of the conversation is very important for people to understand. The whether it's willful or whether it's just they don't communicate it well. The way that the CAD does business is not out in the open, and this collective group of individuals is asking for your support. And they're promising to make all of this and how this process works as accessible and as available as possible for everybody. And for those, just before we get to the end of our show here, let's talk about people that don't own property, because there's a big, huge misconception that, well, if I don't own property, that really doesn't affect me. And if you rent, somebody owns that property. If you buy goods and services in Johnson County or the state, somebody owns that property. So who would like to discuss about how all of that stuff, Mr. Hundley, about all that, how it affects everybody, whether you actually own property or not?
And this system really hurts the poor the worst. So if you think if you're a renter, the owner of that property, that would be commercial property, and there's no homestead exemptions. So when the property values go screaming up, guess what the owner of the property has to do? He has to pass it on to the renter. I'm suspecting after the tax bills go out this month, we're going to see some bad stuff coming.
I agree. And
can I say one thing I've
absolutely.
never experienced in my 20 some odd years of home ownership? I have never experienced an appraisal going down in value. And what we're seeing in the market right now, we're seeing prices drop. Now, can we expect to see that reflected in our appraisals in 2024?
No,
not likely.
And here again, that is and I didn't live in Texas in 2008. Did it happen in 2008?
No.
Okay, there's a problem there. I lived in the state of Washington. I was in the military in 2008.
And as you can imagine, prices bottomed out in that market really bad when the housing bubble burst.
Can I address the over 65 for
absolutely.
Just a moment? I'm over 65, so my taxes on my home are frozen. I go meet friends for breakfast. That restaurant's taxes are not frozen. And that's all factored into their cost. And I've watched the cost of my breakfast go up. A cup of coffee, it's not that expensive, but they've gone up. They have to go up because the property taxes go up, among other things. Inflation's a problem, but the property taxes are an element in their cost structure. So even if you're over 65, you're paying more property tax by being a customer. So if you're over 65 and you think you don't want to go to a school board meeting because you're not affected, you need to get to the school board meeting because you are in fact affected.
Yes.
I agree. And again, we want to, you guys to remember these names: Mr. Paul Jones, Ms. Amy Lingo, Mr. Duaine Goulding, and Mr. John Wood. And we're going to be putting the contact information in the replay, and we need people to contact the taxing entities. You need to remember the taxing entities are dependent on your property appraisals to feed their revenue. And it's not as simple as going to the ballot. This is going to require a little bit of extra work from everybody. And so what do you think the biggest hurdle is to get to the point to where you guys are actually on the board of directors? You talked about the schools. Is it just getting people involved more? Is that what it is?
Absolutely.
I think that's
Yes.
a big part of it. But the biggest hurdle right now is that the existing system favors the incumbents. And of course, it's been that way for decades and decades and decades. The system can be changed. It can only be changed with a different board of directors or by legislation in Austin.
And the system will support their friends who sit on there over the citizens who voted them in office.
Absolutely.
And in fact, one of the council meetings we went to, it came out that the chief appraiser, who reports to the board of directors, had sent his recommendations to the council, which is basically put the incumbent board directors back on the board.
Mm-hmm.
So what he's asking is, here's who I want my bosses to be. I don't know of any place else in America where people get to pick their boss.
Well, and another thing is, city councils and school districts love to, when people pay more taxes, they love to say, oh, it's not us. It's not us. It's your appraisals. They have an intimate part of choosing who makes those decisions. And here again, the collective four are going to work on opening all of this up, explaining to you about data cards, getting the correct people to assess property values. And it's very important that you're going to have to do a little bit of stuff. These insulating layers, they need to be removed. As Mr. Hundley said, the ad valorem tax system is the greatest crime against humanity. So we got about 2 minutes left here. What do you guys want to leave with the citizens, and what do you want to encourage them to do?
What I'd like to say is that we, the candidates, know this fight might be better fought in Austin, but we can't do that. We all live here, and none of us are going to move to Austin. But what we can do is get involved in this system, this process, this board of directors that oversees the chief appraiser, so we can learn more about it and try to inform the public so that they will have a better understanding of how it runs, how the rates are set, and why their taxes are what they are. In this case, we feel we can make a bigger impact working from the local level up and sharing the knowledge we gain to the folks of Johnson County. Additionally, we feel it's time to get the insiders off the board in order to gain the knowledge we seek, and who knows, we believe we can affect some change from here by being on the CAD board if given the chance. What can you do to help? Primarily call, write, and email your independent school district board members. You'd be amazed at what a few phone calls and emails will do. And when they know they're getting calls and emails, they know that there's an exponential number of people out there who are upset with the same thing. So my history of fighting taxation without representation, along with being a businessman for 40 years, I think makes me qualified to be on the CAD. So please recommend me along with my other fellow advocates here.
I just want to say a thank you to the entities that have supported us thus far. And I'd say we've got at least a quarter of their support at this point. And we want to keep that growing.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys. We're with Mr. Paul Jones, Ms. Amy Lingo, Mr. Duaine Goulding, and Mr. John Wood. and get out there and let these people know to put people in the Central Appraisal District Board of Directors who will take care of you and fight for you. Thanks for joining us on the breakdown.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Grandview to Godly. This is the voice of Johnson County, Joco Community Radio.
If you're trying to quit drinking or doing too many drugs, listen to me. You don't know me and we'll never meet. I had a problem like you once. I drank and used to party a little too much till it got out of control and almost ruined my life. I realized I needed help to fix my problem before it totally destroyed me. If you've tried to fix your drinking and drug problem and you know you can't do it alone, you need to call the National Treatment Advisors. They'll immerse you into a 30-day program to replace your old habits with new habits and totally change your life. And if you have PPO private health insurance, the entire program may be covered. Fix your problem right now before it gets any worse. Get clean.